So I want you to think about um, a time you had to step onto a stage.
Oh boy.
Yeah, right. Like maybe it was I don't know, a middle school play,
Mm.
or perhaps this massive presentation at work where your boss was watching.
Right, high stakes.
Exactly. And you have memorized your lines flawlessly. You hold the script in your mind. You know the exact cadence of what you're going to say, and you just feel armored, right? Armored by preparation.
You're ready to go.
You're so ready. But then the other person on stage looks at you and uh, delivers a line that is completely different from what was written in the text.
Oh, that is the
Right.
worst.
Your brain just freezes. The panic sets in.
Yeah, you're just left standing there under the bright lights, holding this internal script for a play that literally nobody else in the room is performing.
Yeah.
The armor of preparation just shatters the second reality diverges from the text.
It really is. And that feeling of total disconnect, that jarring moment when the textbook just, fails in the real world, that is
Yeah.
exactly what we're digging into today.
It's a great topic.
It is. We're pulling from an excerpt of a guide called Everyday English, Real Conversations and Practical Phrases. It's hosted by Alex and Sarah.
Right.
And the mission here for this deep dive, it isn't just to, learn some vocabulary. We are setting out to understand the stark difference between what the source calls textbook robot English and actual, messy, real English.
The way people actually talk.
Exactly. But underneath that language lesson, this guide actually offers some deeply surprising psychological insights into how the human brain acquires literally any new complex skill. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Well, what's fascinating here is how the guide immediately targets our innate desire for formulas.
Yeah.
Because whenever we attempt to learn something difficult, like a new language or, a complex coding framework, we crave a rigid set of rules.
Oh, totally. We want the safety net.
Right. We want to guarantee that if we input A, we will successfully output B. It lowers our cognitive load. It feels safe.
Okay.
But the source explicitly warns against this comfort zone, labeling it robot English.
Robot English, yeah. And that safety net, it unravels with hilarious speed in the real world.
Oh, yeah.
The source highlights this by looking at, the ultimate practitioner of robot English, which is technology.
Naturally.
Right. Because they point out that nobody speaks perfectly, except maybe a translation app.
Yeah.
But relying purely on a direct, literal translation is it's a recipe for disaster.
It never goes well.
Never. The guide uses this example of someone trying to say, I'm full, meaning, they just finished eating a massive dinner.
Okay.
But Google Translate, because it lacks any human context, might spit out the translation for, I am pregnant.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's
Talk about a misunderstanding at the dinner table, right?
that is brutal.
Yeah.
But, it makes sense, right? A machine interprets the vocabulary in a complete vacuum.
Right.
It understands the dictionary definition of the words, but it lacks the situational awareness to grasp the nuance of human context. A machine does not know you are sitting at a dinner table pushing away an empty plate.
No, it doesn't. But humans fall into this exact same robotic trap, though. The guide shares this deeply relatable story from Sarah, one of the hosts.
Yeah.
She talks about the very first English sentence she ever learned, which was, how are you?
The classic.
The classic, textbook-approved opening line. So, armed with this perfect phrase, she uses it on someone, and the other person looks at her and says, I'm feeling terrible today.
Oh, no.
Right.
Because the script dictates that the response should be, I am fine, or I am good.
Exactly.
So when reality presents a different data point, the rigid learner is just entirely unprepared.
Completely. So Sarah just smiled brightly and replied, I'm fine, thank you.
Oh, that's so awkward.
So awkward. She essentially had a conversation entirely with herself. She asked a question, completely ignored the heartbreaking answer she received, and then just, delivered the next line on her internal teleprompter. And Alex shares a similar confession in the source. His first English sentence was, my name is Alex. And rather than learning to actually interact, he just repeated it about 2,000 times into the void.
Yeah, and that is the illusion of perfection right there.
Yeah.
Scripts give a beginner a necessary handhold when they are thrown into the chaotic environment of a new language. You feel like you are communicating because, well, you're making the correct sounds.
Sure.
But this kind of rote memorization, it actually prevents true active listening. You cannot listen to another person if your entire cognitive capacity is focused on, mentally rehearsing your next line.
Right. It's the cognitive equivalent of driving a car by staring obsessively at the GPS while completely ignoring the windshield.
A great way to put it.
Like, you're listening to this calm voice telling you to proceed straight for 200 feet.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, water is rising over your hood because the road washed out yesterday.
Right.
You're technically following the rules of the machine, but you are still driving your car into a lake.
Exactly. When you are focused solely on performance rather than reception, the communication loop is just closed.
Yeah.
True communication is a dynamic, unpredictable feedback loop. If your brain is maxed out trying to remember grammar rules, you literally lack the processing power to parse the emotional state or the unexpected vocabulary of the person standing right in front of you.
So, okay, if that rigid reliance on scripts guarantees failure,
Mm-hmm.
what is the alternative?
Mm.
Because I always assumed the only way past that clumsy beginner phase was to just study harder,
Right.
to memorize more rules until the rules became second nature. But the source moves entirely away from grammar drills. It focuses intensely on the emotional state of the learner.
Yeah, it does. The guide begins its practical instruction by highlighting specific vocabulary words. However, the first word it chooses to teach isn't a high-frequency verb like to be or to go.
Right.
The very first word is comfortable. Yeah. And they define it carefully, feeling relaxed, feeling good, and crucially not feeling nervous. And then they immediately pair this with the second word, nervous, which they define as feeling worried before doing something.
Wait, let me stop you there because my instinct here is a little skeptical.
Yeah.
Isn't prioritizing comfort over rigorous practice just coddling the learner?
Oh.
Like, I always thought you needed a bit of pressure, you know, the fear of failing a test or sounding foolish just to force your brain to actually pay attention and retain difficult material. Doesn't comfort just breed laziness?
That is a very common misconception, actually.
What?
Oh, yeah. It's rooted in this old school industrial model of education. But from a neurobiological standpoint, pressure is the enemy of complex learning. The source is actually deploying a highly sophisticated psychological strategy here. When you're nervous or, striving for absolute perfection in a new skill, your brain's amygdala, the region responsible for processing threats, it activates.
A little like the fight or flight response.
Yes, exactly. When the amygdala senses a threat, even if that threat is just the social embarrassment of mispronouncing a word, it throws up what linguists refer to as an affective filter.
Affective filter.
Yeah. Think of it as a biological firewall. Evolutionary biology dictates that in a moment of threat, your brain prioritizes immediate survival mechanisms, running away, fighting back.
Yeah.
So it actively restricts blood flow and resources to the prefrontal cortex, which is the area of your brain responsible for complex problem-solving, emotional regulation, and acquiring new linguistic patterns.
Wow. So the brain is essentially saying, we don't need to learn a new verb conjugation right now. We just need to survive this social encounter.
Exactly.
And you literally cannot learn when you are stressed.
You are locked out of your own higher cognitive functions. So by explicitly defining the words comfortable and nervous, and by normalizing the feeling of anxiety, like telling the listener that even teachers get nervous, the guide is actively lowering that affective filter.
That makes so much sense.
They're trying to keep the learner's brain in a safe mode, so the prefrontal cortex remains open to incoming data.
So they establish that emotional baseline, and only then do they introduce the third vocabulary word, which is practice,
Right.
which is defined simply as doing something again and again to improve. But their rule for practice flies in the face of traditional cramming. Alex and Sarah advocate for 15 to 20 minutes a day.
Yeah.
They insist that short, daily consistency heavily outweighs studying for 5 hours straight once a month. Their guiding philosophy is small steps, big progress.
Because cramming for 5 hours creates an immense cognitive load, which spikes the exact anxiety they're trying to avoid. Short bursts of practice prevent the affective filter from deploying.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. This approach makes me think about keeping a houseplant alive.
Okay, I like this.
Like, if you bring a new fern home, you cannot just ignore it for 29 days and then dump a 5-gallon bucket of water onto it on the last day of the month.
Right, it would die.
Exactly. You will drown the roots, the water will run all over the floor, and the plant will die. To thrive, it needs a small, manageable amount of water every single day. The roots need time to actually absorb the moisture.
That biological analogy maps perfectly onto synaptic plasticity.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When you learn something new, your neurons form new connections. Those connections are incredibly fragile at first. Sleeping, resting, and stepping away from the material allows those neural pathways to consolidate and strengthen.
Wow.
So short daily practice essentially waters those new neural connections, letting them solidify before you add more water.
Okay, so once that effective filter is lowered and the learner is committed to their 15 minutes of daily watering, what exactly is growing? Because we know they aren't memorizing robotic scripts.
No.
The guide shifts into teaching phrases that seem surprisingly simple. They aren't tackling complex geopolitical debate terminology. They're teaching the absolute basic social glue of everyday life.
The micro-interactions that dictate the actual rhythm of our days.
Yeah, like they feature an expression of the day, which is, take your time.
Right.
And the context provided is someone telling you they are running late or need a few minutes to grab their coat, and you respond to assure them there is no rush.
Yeah.
Then the guide fires off a quick list of similar phrases. How's it going? No worries. Sounds good. I'm on my way. And see you around.
And alongside those casual phrases, they provide a very telling pronunciation tip regarding the word comfortable.
Oh, this part caught my attention.
Yeah.
The guide notes that beginners tend to over-enunciate, trying to pronounce every single letter based on the spelling. They will carefully say it with 4 distinct syllables. Comfortable.
Right.
But native speakers don't do that. They crush the middle of the word completely, reducing it to 3 syllables. Comfortable.
Comfortable. Yeah, the vowels in the middle are almost entirely erased.
So what does this all mean? Because I look at this section, phrases like no worries,
Yeah.
and the instruction to smash syllables together, and it feels less like a language class and more like a lesson in blending in.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this section illustrates the deep divide between orthography, which is how language is written, and phonology, how it is actually spoken.
Okay.
If you carefully enunciate comfortable, you are proving to the listener that you know how the word is spelled. But real human communication rarely prioritizes spelling. It prioritizes flow, efficiency, and social signaling.
See, I used to view dropping syllables as just a lazy habit of native speakers. I assumed a proper language course would try to correct that laziness.
It isn't laziness, though. It is a linguistic phenomenon called elision.
Elision.
Yes. We drop sounds to make speech faster and physically easier to produce. And more importantly, using these specific phrases like sounds good or take your time serves a function known as phatic communion.
What is that?
Phatic communion. These phrases don't convey complex new information. If I say, how's it going? I am rarely asking for a detailed medical or psychological evaluation of your day.
Right. You are just checking to make sure we are on good terms.
Precisely. These phrases are social lubricants. They are verbal handshakes. They signal to the other person's amygdala, I acknowledge you, we are part of the same social group, there is no threat here.
Oh, wow.
By teaching these specific tools, the guide is equipping the learner to navigate human relationships, to put others at ease, which in turn makes the learner feel more accepted and secure.
So you are literally learning to signal safety.
Exactly.
But to achieve that kind of natural rhythm, to build those relationships, the learner has to step out of the safety of the textbook.
Yes.
They have to risk saying the wrong thing. They have to be willing to be vulnerable. Which brings us to a massively important element of this guide. It relies heavily on being genuinely funny, often at the host's own expense.
Which is rare because academic study guides are rarely known for their comedic timing.
No, never. But this one has a dedicated segment called Funny Story. Sarah tells a story about her early days learning English. She was trying to express to a native speaker that she was incredibly happy and anticipating something wonderful. The script in her head called for the phrase, I'm excited. But she grabbed the wrong file from her brain and proudly announced, I'm exhausted.
Oh, wow. Delivering a completely different emotional reality to the listener.
Completely different. The native speaker looked at her with genuine concern and gently suggested that she needed to go to sleep. Sarah wanted to convey boundless energy, and instead she convinced a stranger she was on the verge of a physical collapse.
That's amazing.
And they followed this up with a dialogue where Alex has lost his phone. He is tearing the room apart, frantically asking Sarah if she has checked her bag, his pockets, under the cushions.
Right.
This search goes on for 5 minutes. The punchline is that Alex was using the flashlight on his own phone to search under the couch for his phone.
Oh, I've done that. A very modern, highly relatable moment of total absent-mindedness.
Totally. And
Oh.
Sarah's only response is to laugh and say, congratulations, you have officially become an adult. But then the guide immediately transitions from this laughter into a mini listening practice, detailing a mundane daily routine. Waking up, making coffee, But then it pivots sharply into a challenge for today.
Oh.
The learner is asked to speak 3 specific sentences out loud. I practice English every day. I'm not afraid to make mistakes. And I can improve little by little.
The shift in methodology there is stark. Those are not vocabulary tests.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
They feel entirely different from repeating, my name is Alex.
Yeah.
These sentences function like cognitive behavioral tools.
Yeah.
They're daily affirmations. You're being asked to vocalize a new reality for yourself, specifically programming your brain to accept that making mistakes is part of the process.
And this raises an important question.
Yeah.
Why would an educational guide dedicate so much of its limited running time to a story about sleep deprivation or a guy wandering around with a flashlight? It isn't merely an icebreaker to keep the listener entertained. There is a deeply rooted neurobiological strategy at play here regarding memory consolidation. Humor actively changes how the brain stores information.
Really? Because I always assumed a teacher telling a joke was just a trick to keep the students from falling asleep at their desks. Are you saying the humor physically alters the memory?
It does. When you experience a sudden emotional shift, like the unexpected punchline of the flashlight story or the empathetic cringe of Sarah saying she is exhausted, your brain releases a surge of neurotransmitters, particularly dopamine.
Okay.
Dopamine is often associated with pleasure, but in learning, it acts like a biological highlighter pen.
Wow. It tags the moment.
It tags the moment and the contextual information surrounding it as highly significant. Your brain says this produced a strong emotional reaction, therefore this data is important for future survival or social cohesion. Keep this.
So by tying the vocabulary words excited and exhausted to a story of a wildly awkward, highly human social interaction, they are supercharging the listener's ability to recall those words.
Exactly. A flashcard with the word excited offers no emotional resonance. It is just ink on paper.
Right.
But when you associate those words with the feeling of embarrassment and subsequent laughter, you engage a much deeper network in the brain. You remember the feeling, the context, and consequently, the vocabulary is locked in.
That turns the entire concept of a mistake upside down.
It really does.
Like it takes the very thing we are terrified of, sounding stupid in front of another person, and reveals it to be the exact mechanism that causes the brain to permanently learn the right way to behave.
In the rigid world of robot English, an error is a systemic failure. It means you broke the rule and must be penalized.
Yeah.
But in the fluid world of real human interaction, an error is simply a high-value data point. It provides the necessary emotional friction to ensure you never make that specific error again. The mistake optimizes your brain for the next interaction.
This is so fascinating. Pulling all these threads together from this deep dive, the blueprint for mastering a complex skill starts to look very different from what we were taught in school.
Absolutely.
We started by analyzing an everyday language guide, but we have uncovered a much broader philosophy about learning.
The primary takeaway is that striving for robotic perfection is a trap. Clinging to a script might make you feel prepared, but it actively prevents you from listening to the environment around you.
Staring at the GPS while the water rises over the windshield.
Yes.
Instead, the foundation of all successful learning is emotional regulation. You have to find a way to lower that affective filter, the biological firewall, so your prefrontal cortex can actually receive and process the new information.
And once the brain is in a receptive state, the method of delivery matters. Marathon, high-stress cramming sessions are counterproductive. Real retention requires the daily consistency of a 15-minute practice.
Right.
You have to give the neural pathways time to rest and consolidate. You water the plant a little bit every day. You do not drown it once a month.
Small steps.
Yeah.
Big progress. And ultimately, achieving true fluency in any subject requires a willingness to step away from the textbook and embrace the messy reality of human interaction. The social glue that holds our lives together isn't built on perfect grammar or flawless execution. It is built on shared vulnerability, efficiency, and the ability to signal to one another that we are safe.
The mistakes we make along the way are not roadblocks preventing us from reaching our goal. They are the essential data points that construct the path forward.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends. We explored how a funny mistake, like telling a stranger you were exhausted when you meant to say excited, triggers a chemical rush of dopamine that permanently anchors that knowledge in the brain.
The biological highlighter pen.
Exactly. So consider this. What if those deeply embarrassing errors, those specific moments of failure that cause you to lie awake in bed at 2 in the morning cringing at the memory, are not actually signs of your inadequacy? What if they're your brain's most evolved, powerful tool for ensuring you learn? Instead of being something to avoid at all costs, perhaps the sheer panic of stepping onto a stage when the script gets thrown out is the only way we ever learn how to truly perform. Think about that the next time you find yourself wildly off script.